Mr. Speaker, I stand before you today to offer an apology to former students of Indian residential schools. The treatment of children in Indian residential schools is a sad chapter in our history. We now recognize that far too often these institutions gave rise to abuse or neglect and were inadequately controlled, and we apologize for failing to protect you. Not only did you suffer these abuses as children, but as you became parents, you were powerless to protect your own children from suffering the same experience. And for this, we are sorry.
Well, here I go again, making another scene. I can't remember what my hissy fit was about this time. Maybe I was mad at the doctor for taking too long to deliver me. Or maybe I didn't like being born in a pink hospital. Or perhaps I was afraid to begin this new life. But here I was, a newborn half-breed, a two-spirited Tlingit. But hold on, that comes later. I spent most of my life not knowing any of this. I had no idea who I was. I was no one, and I lived as such. I knew of no other way to live, and there I remained in my own void. But I grew tired of my night and wanted to see my life for what it was meant to be. Just existing was not enough. I had no idea where to start looking. And then I heard about residential schools. I knew that my mother went to one, but I thought, what does that have to do with me? But the Kian Kau guided me back to where I started my journey. My mother held the key that would unlock my box of treasure. Coast is a Kaska community located just inside the British Columbia border where it meets the Yukon. For countless generations before the Alaska Highway, many different people stopped for trading. Maybe this was why it was chosen for an Indian residential school. But now, the peoples who came here were their children, who were kidnapped here against their will. It was here that my mother was interned for 5 years, snatched away from her mother and father by the federal government. So we just get out and we look at the school.
Which school?
To the right. This is the first time my mother and I have returned to Lower Post together. We're both scared. There are many ghosts here. I knew that I lived here, but I didn't know that I lived here for the first 2 friggin' years of my life. This is where they tried to kill the Tlingit in her. This is our healing journey, and we are trusting that Haa Koosteeyi, our Tlingit Way, will protect us from what we discover. We inland Tlingit are descendants of coastal Tlingit brothers and sisters. We settled into the Yukon from what is now southeast Alaska. During the 19th century, we came up the Taku River to Teslin. To survive, we hunted, fished, tanned hides, and worked together in small clan groups. A strong, close-knit community was essential to our social structure. But most of our climate changed when the Alaska Highway was built in 1942, and the new road made it easier for the Indian agent to find our children. I've been dreading this day in some ways, and also looking forward to it. I'm going to hear from my mother what happened to her in Lower Post. Not really sure if I'm fully prepared for what she may tell me. No one talks much about the children born to those who went to Indian residential school. Are we affected? Today, I'm about to find out. But wait, there's still another person missing from the story. My father, Cyril Aucoin, was born on the other side of the country in New Waterford, Nova Scotia. Back then, coal mining was the town's main employer, and religion was mostly served by the Roman Catholic Church. He came to the Lower Post Indian Residential School as the boys' dormitory supervisor in 1967. He must have been a fairly good guy, because it wasn't long before he and my mother caught each other's attention. She was part of the kitchen staff. Those were the best days she had with my father, and sadly, some of the last. Haa Koosteeyi, our Tlingit Way, has the medicines that will cleanse and protect us. We smudge with sage to purify our spirits and to lift our prayers up to the spirit world. We sing our song so our voices will speak in a good way. The truth needs a safe place to be heard.
Hai ti da shi, hai ti da shi, da ki an kau, da ki an kau. Gunnach cheesh ho ho, gunnach cheesh ho ho, da ki an kau, da ki an kau. You want to look at this now?
Pictures capture the truth of the moment they are taken. That's why I put together this photo album, so that we can explore these truths together. Now, how old were you when they came for you for Lower Post?
8. I was 8 years old
Hmm.
in 1954.
How did they come?
They just, from what I can remember, they had those big trucks, like big cattle trucks. And we'd all stand in the back. We'd all be packed in there, in the back there, the back of that truck. That's what, from what I can remember.
Were you allowed to bring stuff?
To the
Yeah,
school.
to Lower Post.
Anything we brought was taken from us. When we first came there, we had they call it our home clothes. What we came with, that was taken from us, and we were given clothes from there.
I've heard all this before from other survivors of Indian residential school. The same suffering, the same abuse, and the same programming. But this is the first time I've heard this from Tlingit, which is Tlingit for mum. And it hurts me.
If they caught us speaking Tlingit, they'd either strap us, or if there was anything like a movie, it didn't matter if the movie, if they were showing us the movie at 5 o'clock, we'd have to go to bed. But there was a lot of punishment there.
Tlingit was programmed to obey, especially Tlingit, white people. Her heart wanted to be loved, but her mind was set to be controlled. Then along came my dad.
He saw me working, and then after a few days, he came and talked to me.
Mm.
And we started seeing each other.
How was he back then?
He was good back then.
Yeah.
You know, he was really good.
They courted, and a year later he proposed marriage, something the nuns at Lower Post never prepared her for. How was she to know what a good man was? Young and in love, she said yes.
You know, I don't know if you remember She's the one that made that dress.
Oh. Didn't she tell you stuff about Dad?
German. It was after I got married.
Yeah.
That she said that she saw one side of him before we got married. After we got married, she saw the other side of him, which she didn't like.
Tlingit says Dad's treatment of her started to go downhill even before I came along. I was born while they both lived and worked at Lower Posts in 1969. She once told me how Dad slapped her on the head when she didn't change my diaper quick enough for him. It should have been a sign to her, but didn't the nuns also slap her? Wasn't this normal?
They used to pound into us any wrong we did. We were committing a sin, and we'd go to hell. And that our own beliefs was pagan.
Then my brother Bernie was born. The doctor injured his skull during delivery, causing water on the brain and giving him permanent brain damage. He spent his whole short life in the hospital. It was after this my father really became more controlling, angrier, and physically abusive towards Mum. He scared me.
You know, that's how I always felt with him, is the way he treated Bernie, the way he treated you, the way he treated me. It's like we were property.
Mm-hmm.
For him to decide to do with whatever he wanted. Yeah. Kind of like what they did to you in Lower Post. You were just cattle, the way he cattled you out to Lower Post.
Mm-hmm.
Dad ruled our lives so completely, he even controlled our emotions. Bernie died at the White Horse Hospital in 1974. I was too young to know what death meant. All I knew was that my little brother was gone. Mum was heartbroken, and Dad was too, but he demanded she suck it up. Grieving is part of our Tlingit Way, but it wasn't part of his, and he wouldn't accept it under his roof.
Back then, your dad wouldn't let me mourn for him. He told me that I should be happy that he's suffering more and that he's gone, and I shouldn't cry for him.
So he wouldn't even let you cry?
No. I started to cry when I heard about him, but then he stopped me. And that was the end. That was it. And I didn't mourn for him until I went back into Thunder Bay. It was the time that I finally mourned for my son.
Yeah.
Found she was living in isolation. Dad dragged us from Lower Post to jobs at group home after group home. We traveled from one end of the country to the other. I was her only company, and for me, she was my whole world. Dad was always too busy or too tired for me, and besides, he wasn't the most pleasant person to be around anyway. Mum found a way to cope, and I got left behind.
Life wasn't getting any better for us. It just seemed to be getting worse. And back then, I just didn't care. I didn't care.
And I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
It's because it was... Well, I relied completely on you because I didn't have Dad.
Yeah.
Didn't have a father. And it would have been bad enough if he wasn't around, but he wasn't around emotionally, but when it's just always the constant anger.
Yeah. And then,
So when
after, well, like you say, you didn't have your dad, and then I turned to alcohol, and you didn't have me either.
Dad was the one who started Mom drinking, and then he beat her when she wouldn't stop. Once more, mixed messages were coming her way. Later, she would tell me that in residential school, kids were forced to go to confession. To confess, the nuns made up a sin for them. That school really set the tone for my home environment.
My main memory in that house was one time after, like, he was beating you up down in the master bedroom, and he wouldn't stop.
Yeah.
I was trying to get him to stop. And I remember that, I remember running to the kitchen, grabbing a big cast iron frying pan, and I ran down to the master bedroom, and if he was still beating you, I was going to kill him. I was how old, and I'm like, this is the only way I'm going to make it stop.
And what he told me was I deserved it because I drank. It wasn't until in 1982, I remember that day, I'll never forget that day. That was the day that you came and told me, Mom, what are you doing to yourself? What are you doing to me? Look what you're doing to yourself and me. And that was the day I decided that I was going to put it away for you. And that's the day I put, December 12th, 1982 was the day I put that bottle away and never to pick it up again.
Mom started crawling out of the darkness, but I was now deep into my own anger. I was mad at my parents for what they put me through. Now it was my turn. I lived the way I wanted to. I fell in love with the boy, partied like it was 1999, and ran away to the big city. I did everything I could to push their buttons. Oh, I put them through hell. But it was to give them a taste of their own medicine. Anger was my only friend.
And I remember that one time that Dad told he didn't want Michael hanging out anymore. And Michael stayed over. Middle of the night, the door flies open and Dad's screaming at us, telling Michael to get out. And I snapped verbally at him, just telling him if I had it with him. And that's the first beating I remember from him. And I remember I wouldn't shut up. I told him, hit me again, hit me like you hit Mom. And he wouldn't stop, and I wouldn't stop. I wouldn't shut up.
In 1992, Mom and I left Dad and started a new life in Teslin. I became a parent raising two young relatives, Ray and Scott. I naively believed I would never put my kids through what I suffered. But my own private lower post followed me, and my own family too.
And I think that's I see a lot of mistakes I've made raising them, and I would go from one extreme to I'd become like Dad. I'd go one extreme to being too hard on them. Then I went to another extreme of just not being in their life, sort of thing. I remember once giving me a hard time, and it's like, give us rules. Because I didn't know how to parent. It's the same thing. You didn't know how to parent from residential school. I didn't know how to parent. So I was flopping all over the place. And then I become too self-focused on my own journey. I became self-absorbed in my own path, my own journey, that I forgot about them for a long time. Sure, I put a roof over their head and stomachs and stuff, but I was like I wasn't there emotionally. Yeah, and it hurts, because I think that's what hurts every parent is that when they become what they fear the most. And it's partly for them too why I do this. Because I think the more you talk about it, I talk about it, the more healing we all go through.
Yeah.
And we'll be able to leave it behind us.
It's taken
And
us a
finally get on.
Yeah.
And we'll be free from it. We were free from Dad October 16th, 1992. But you know, today is the day that that our hearts are finally going to be free. So our whole self are going to be free. And I just tell you how much I love you. I know you weren't. I know you never did anything to hurt me. And it's not your fault what happened. I had so much anger at you, even more than Dad, because you were my everything. But I know now, because I've gone through it myself as a parent, that I know that you love me, and I know Dad loves me too, and I forgive him. And I still love him in my own way. And I know you did your best with me. And I know I did my best with these kids. And I know they're going to do their best with their kids. And it makes me feel good. I can actually feel good about myself. And I couldn't have done it without you.
I couldn't have done it without you too. I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I hurt you. But I thank you for being there for me too. So it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here today. With all the hurt and pain we went through together.
I love you.
I love you too.
In Teslin, I found what I didn't even know I was missing. Haa Koosteeyi. Our Tlingit Way has taught me to deal with my baggage. We say imagineNATIVE, which means do your best. You will see one of our creation stories played out before you. The legend of Raven stealing the sun teaches me something new every time. Like Raven, I was tired of the darkness, and like Nashak I didn't want to share my light. But in the end, the box is now open and everything is made clear. My hope is that Raven's light will shine down on you too. Shukwanach, Jes Kugamji Gate, Klilgagan, Katlildis, Haa Koosteeyi Kuchanaha, Che Yach Tuj Yach Siti. Yeh, Kiji Yach. Ashwechlich witch, Taji Yede, we Yeh. Gaan gagane teil ultsin. Klelchega, klachet nashakan kau, she de hain du shagun ede. Du shawede yek sugenge, du sik ko o klegenage, ka du gohu. Du etchi isani nas koch tu ye yati. Kutkana ha. Dis a kok klein awa klega se et atu ye yati gagan. Na shakan kau koku amsitin we yech a du tua segu. Na shakan kau kawe du shet tin klach ega a silchanin as du sik klech a de kleg ye yanach dudzi kaye ye. We du gochu chan du kench hin kach as du sik jeyis. We yech du jega wuti aga awe as. Tach al-i shwudle, yech aga awe hin tin, wududzi in. We has to seek klecha west in, we hin amdinayi, we as tach al-i in. Gushukyagi kaua, kumzi ti dukanayi, yach. Na shakan kau du dachkant kle chega I sechanan kle katet e jide ye adanean klach ega wudi chwet we yech we du chish kogu da dek da kach yagi klein da dek da gach we yech klach ega wude chwet we du chish aga awe we kut chana ha Gu as git awatan aga awe we ye shede ashuatan we cook kut khana ha atu dak cake come du ken ke come du ken we khats today na shakan kau du shawade kadusik e yaschant uwanuk Wush has du kani away lade amdli sin dis dakakugu e dach a shuya watan we dis a du dach we de kain we du kohuch hede shutan nashakan kau kauch jage ga ke ashach klech a watlak thudakat ko ayach we kashan du dachant kheyis khant Uwanuk we dis ka kukhanaha kutashawati we ye kiltuin wuti jaska gan ku awe du to wasagu nashakan kau ashji ayam klisik klach ega du jeshagune ye yati just we gagag dakakok ash to wasagu du to wu gachlak e Klech dis anachua kadagach 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 Klech dukat has touch has uatak ade has wudi chwet ye Mayuk dia dujim klechish yuk daya shukshe aga awe gaganda kakok ach awe shat gande ajiwanak gagenach awe hede ashuatan we gagan gande ajiwunak kenachich aga awe at kamdigan gagan klech tekat at ayanach kamdigan de tuwu yak iye yan at sine iye telte kat we ye na shakan kau ye sitin masakuanuk kud awe awa ge at du tuwu yanik du kut khanaha kadu disi kadu dagagan Klach ega du tuwu yanik du dachkan ge kut awe ge aga awe du kat kam diga wes ina gagan ot anyench gage giten yak du daya kush shu shige